What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Optimize You. We have a special guest again, recurring guest. I'm excited because I get to do a podcast with two of my favorite people in the world. We got Gillian coming on the podcast, a little bit of round table, and I got my boy Matt. I'll go to Gillian. What's going on, Gillian?
Hi, nothing much. Hanging out. I'm excited to be here. I love being able to talk to you, and I'm excited to talk to Matt for the first time about everything too.
Hell yeah, I'm pumped too.
It's going to be good. Just for the people out there, we're going to go into the top 10. So Matt and myself, we Googled, ChatGPT'd the top 10 mindset tips for health and fitness. And so we just kind of we'll run down the list and just kind of give our points, our discussion on it, talk about it, do a little round table. The list is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to have a lot of good discussion points.
I like the first one right off the bat. The first one is, we talk about this one all the time, right? And it's most of the time when people are struggling. But curious to know your thoughts on this, Gillian, about goal setting. What do you do with your clients? What do you do for yourself? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I think it's important that you have a specific goal that you set, so that way you know what you're actually striving for. Otherwise, I think it's really easy to be like lacking that discipline. I think when you have a goal, that's where the discipline comes in, where you can follow through with it, versus where a lot of the time people lose that motivation and then they're like, okay, well, like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. And I think it's also cool to have goals that change, right? So that way it's not that you're always striving for like aesthetics, but maybe sometimes you're striving for performance, or sometimes you're striving for lifestyle goals. So that way you don't get caught in just like one area and burned out in the long run.
I agree. I mean, I think that it's so key when it comes to success. And I was listening to Ed My Lab podcast this morning. I don't know if either of you listened to the most recent one that was on like health, fitness, building muscle, protein. It was with Ed's doctor, and it's amazing. If you guys haven't listened to this one, I forgot what her name is because
I saw it. I saw the thumbnail for it, but I haven't checked it out. It's on my list. I'm going to check it out.
Super good. But they talked about in there as well a lot about building muscle and how it's linked to longevity, and how there's that person in the gym who's been doing the same weight the whole time. You always see them benching 135, and they've been doing it for 5 years. Right. And I think that's kind of what you see when you don't set goals, is that you don't necessarily have that drive to push forward towards anything. You know, it's easy to just stay the same and continue doing the same things. And maybe you have good habits, but you aren't necessarily growing because you don't have something to shoot for that's like challenging yourself.
Totally. I agree with that 100%. And then Jillian, you brought up something too that was interesting and I think is really cool in terms of it's okay to change your goals. Like Now we're not talking about like every single day, change them up. Right. But maybe if you were working towards something and all of a sudden you either achieved it, or maybe it's just kind of deviated, maybe it just shifted a little bit. Right. Like I'm sure you deal with that with clients, and it's our job as coaches too, to help them stay on track, so where is that line, or do you draw a line where it's like, okay, we need to stay focused here on this goal? Or do you kind of more so let somebody elaborate and be like, okay, yeah, like let's shift that goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think for clients, it kind of depends. I tend to strive more towards lifestyle because like my goal is working with more lifestyle clients that I want to be able to integrate health and fitness into their life for the rest of their life. Like when they're done coaching with me, like that's my goal with most of my clients. I think that it is important to stick to like a specific and a solid goal. But I think because most of my clients are such beginners or so new to fitness, right? Like under eating protein, like lucky if they work out, like things like that, like just trying to get them to stick to something that fits their routine. I always say like the best plan for you to follow is going to be one that actually makes sense for your lifestyle. Because if I write you this great plan to get you results, but you're literally not going to do it at all because it makes no sense for your lifestyle, then we've completely lost, and that makes no sense. So if I can find something where it's a lot of the time is creating balance for people, that's typically what I do the best at, because so many people are also so like all or nothing and yo-yo dieters, and that's why they never get results, right? So it's like finding how can we maintain this in the long run? And if you do have a specific goal that you really want, then it's like, all right, let's allot like a timeline and a time frame so we can chase that. But then just know you have to promise me afterwards that we're going to create that like balance afterwards and create it to fit into your lifestyle long term.
I love that you talk about balance. I think that's so huge. Where people diet all year round and wonder why they don't see the results. Right? It's like they always want to go at it, just a hamster spinning their wheels. And I'm curious, both of you guys, how do you go about the setting of like weight loss goals? Right? Let's be honest, we all work with a lot of weight loss, and I think what I found in the past is that so many clients can get so attached to that number, right? How do you guys go about helping clients set a number that's realistic? And also, how do you help them get away from that number? Because we all know that focusing so heavily on that number is only going to lead to struggles, because really that's not truly what people want, right? They don't necessarily want to see the number in the end. What I've found is that people want to feel better, they want to look better, they want to be more confident, right? So how do you guys navigate that? Matt, let's go with you first.
I think it's one of those things where you have to address it right away so that it's not like this elephant in the room every time they do a check-in and they don't see like the scale go down 1.5, 2 pounds, and then they freak out, right? So it's like, have that conversation early and often. And one of the things I think is super important, and Alex, you and I talk about this all the time too, is like, what lens are you choosing to view this through right now? And so most of the time people will come to us and I want to lose 20, 30, 40, 50 plus pounds, whatever it is. They have some arbitrary number. And I go, okay, great. I usually save this conversation for after the initial one, but we will bring it up. And it's more so like, okay, if you were to have your dream body, if you were to feel amazing, if your energy levels were restored so that you stopped making excuses with your kids, if your clothes fit differently, if you literally had your dream body, but the only people that knew what that scale said were you and me. So if you hopped on it and it said 300 pounds, but you looked beautiful, you looked amazing, you felt phenomenal, would you take that bet if I could just wave my wand and do that? And they think about it a little bit like, wait, so only you and me can see the scale number? I'm like, yep, that's it. And so immediately that it puts them in the right frame of like, okay, this scale doesn't mean shit anymore. Like let's focus on the things that actually lead to what I truly want to go. And it gets them to let their guard down too, of like, I'll ask questions and dig a little bit deeper, like why 20 pounds? Like why 27 pounds? Like why 40? Like what, and sometimes they can't even put a reason to it. And then, or you uncover the actual reason that's really important to them. I'm like, okay, let's hone in and harness on that, because you may get that, but the scale might not say 20 or 30 or 40 pounds. And so I think just eliminating that belief and making sure they look through the lens that is going to serve them best long term is most important. That's kind of what I do with my clients.
Love it. What do you think, Gillian?
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing. And I know, Alex, you do a lot of like that mindset stuff first to get people to like know their why it's so important. And Matt, you kind of talk about it. It's like, well, what do you really want, right? You want to look hot, you want to feel confident, you want to be able to feel your best. That's really what it is at the core. And so I think it's just getting people to realize too that like when you start to make these changes, it's not just about the number on the scale. And a lot of the times I don't have my clients even weigh themselves much. And we look at other biofeedback markers, like how they're feeling, how clothes are fitting, if they're getting stronger in the gym. Like we look at all of these other things and they start to realize, and it starts to click, and they're like, oh my God, wait, like I'm sleeping so much better. Or I feel like I can like put a meal together and I don't feel like complete garbage afterwards. I actually have energy all day. And they're like, wait, this stuff is so much more important than what I actually thought I wanted. And like you said, like they'll throw a number and it's like, well, like, what does that number even mean? Like, where did you even get it? And they're like, I literally have no idea. It's just like in their head, they're thinking like, oh, that's probably how much overweight I am or something like that. Right. But it doesn't even make sense. And this happened to me with one of my clients where she initially came in for like the aesthetic and the weight loss goal. And we literally just talked about this yesterday. And she's like, I feel like I'm a completely different person. She was like, I realized like how shitty I used to eat. And like now she's like, I can't even imagine going back to that. And she's like, just telling me all of these things about her biofeedback that's been like phenomenal. And she's like, I no longer like care about the number on the scale. And I think once you can get people to see all of the amazing benefits that it has outside of that, people start to trust the process. And again, right, because my goal is that lifestyle to switch, and they start to realize like, oh yeah, like I want to do this like long term, like I'm in it, like I'm excited to hit my workouts now. I have clients that would dread hitting their workouts, and now they're like, I'm excited because I'm getting stronger. Once you start to see these small little changes, I feel like people start to really realize like the bigger picture.
Oh, so true. So true. And literally like it's exciting. And what I would even, just for anybody listening out there as well, understand that this type of change that Gillian's talking about, that Matt's talking about, that I'm talking about with your mindset, it doesn't like, it takes a while sometimes. Like I've had clients where it takes like 6 months for that really to like click. Right. But in the grand scheme of things, when you kind of spread that over the course of a lifespan, that's a very small amount of time. Right. And it's something that's going to change their life. And what I always think about with that weight as well is asking people, prying people into like, all right, you got to that weight, right? You lost the 20 pounds. What does that get you? Right? Like what does that mean? You know, just like kind of digging into that, because that's what they really want, right? It's like, oh, I have more energy. Oh, I have more confidence. Oh, you know, I look better. I feel better. All of these things. And what I think is that if we can develop metrics around those things that they really want, now we're getting somewhere, right? Like now we're actually getting somewhere. If we can have them look at energy, if we can have them look at mood, if we can have them look at, you know, strength gains, like all these different things. And if we can have them monitor their wins on a regular basis to build confidence, now we're really starting to track the things that are truly going to move them forward. And so that's kind of the things that I like to do with my clients. But I'll go into number 2 because I got the list up as well, Matt, and it's on staying consistent. And so, Gillian, what are your thoughts on like the importance when it comes to mindset in health and fitness with staying consistent?
I think it's the same thing that I kind of talked about, is it needs to fit your lifestyle, because if it doesn't, you're always going to burn out and you're not going to be able to keep up with it. Like you can't follow a plan that just sounds good on paper if it literally makes no sense for your life. If you're a busy mom, if you're stressed all the time, if you have like a crazy like work-life balance that isn't there, like you have to be okay with being like, okay, yeah, we could work out like 2 days a week. Like that's good. Like I'll have so many clients that are like, I'm not going to get results. I need like to work out 5 days a week. I can't stop. Like I'm like, no. You will get results. Let's just stay consistent for at least like 2 workouts a week. Can you do that for me? And then a lot of the time they're like reluctant, but they're like, okay, fine. And then they do it and they're like, wait, I'm actually kind of getting results. Wait, I'm not like beating myself up trying to feel so guilty because I'm not going to the gym 5 days a week. Like this actually like works for me. And like that consistency is like, how can we make this fit into your lifestyle? And like same thing for diet, right? Is like making those small tweaks and changes where we don't switch their whole life and like flip it completely, but we just integrate tiny little changes over time, which is hard for a lot of people because they feel like, oh, I'm not going to get results fast enough, or I'm not going to get there. But it's like, no, like this is actually how you'll get there and stay with it forever.
100%. I agree with that totally. And this was a huge mistake that I used to do as a coach. Like when I was first getting started, I used to program for people both workouts and from a nutritional standpoint of what would yield the result the best, right? Regardless of where they're at. So I would like throw the whole kitchen sink at them, like, all right, we're training 4 days a week. What are you doing now? 0? Okay, it doesn't matter. You just need to catch up to speed, right? Like, and that was on me as a coach. And now, you know, I learned and I'm like, okay, let me just meet them where they're at. If we want them to stay consistent, and to your point too, like if they're going to have these big eyes, especially when they get that quick dopamine hit of just starting the program, they've exchanged and gave forth their financials and they're like, boom, I feel like I've done something and I've accomplished something. I want to keep this snowball effect going. So I want to train 4 or 5 days a week. And you know, this is the one thing that I always ask them too. I'm like, that's great. I love that ambition. Like, I'm looking way beyond what you're going to do in the first week here. Like, and I encourage you to do the same. So this is what I ask on my intake form is how many days are you willing to commit to for the rest of your life for working out? And it completely changes how they view it. And I'm like, oh, and I'm saying like, even on a shitty week, like pick your most horrible, stressful week that you're going to have, the most curveballs that you're going to throw that are going to be thrown that are unexpected. how many days can you still adjust your schedule, make things happen, and commit to that many days for working out? And it gets them to go, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm in this for the long haul, not just ride this quick dopamine high and crush 5 days in a row and be so sore I can't walk on week 2 and then screw it, I'm not doing workouts anymore, right? So I think if somebody wants to be consistent, and this comes from a nutritional standpoint too, it's like, okay, you're eating all this crap, you're fueling your body with all this crap. What's one or two things? I heard a great video, I forget who it was by, but I started doing it and it really, really worked. Is had somebody write out their 7 days, and then you let them pick what they want to choose to fix first. A lot of times as a coach, I'm like, I want to go in and change everything, right? Like I want to help them right away. But when you get them to go, just ask them, like, what do you want to change first, after they lay out their entire week? And they're like, well, now that it's on paper and I see it, I could probably change these 2 things first. And they start like circling shit. And now they're taking ownership. They're taking accountability versus me as the coach saying, hey, do this, right? And kind of pointing at them. And I found that, like you were saying, Gillian, they get consistency with just meeting them where they're at, with just starting small, super simple, finding the other wins that are outside of the scale to keep them consistent. And then they can start to catch momentum, and now consistency comes. But when we throw everything at them from a coaching perspective, it becomes very difficult for them. They may do it, they may get lucky, and they may crush it. But it's just like, to what degree are they going to be able to sustain that? And all of a sudden, we're no longer consistent anymore. So I love that. I'll dive into the next one. Oh, go ahead, dude.
Dude, what? No, I just have a question. I think that's amazing. First off, like that whole having them write out 7 days, circle the things that they're wanting to do, like they're driving it, right? Like they're driving what they want to do. Like, do you have this is the ideal? Like, okay, so let's say you have them track all this stuff, right? It's like, okay, you know what their water is, you know what they're sleeping, their sleep is, their workouts, their steps, their food, all that stuff, like protein. Let's say you have those 6 things just as like a thing. Are you kind of like, okay, so here's where you're at. Here's ideally where we would like, this is how you would maximize these areas. Like, is that kind of how you do it? Or is it just like, hey, like this is like, you're low here, right? Like you're drinking this much water. We want you to be at like half your body weight in ounces. Like we wouldn't just go right up there, but here's just the numbers that you should see. Like this is how far off you are from optimal, right? Like, and that's not to say we're going to go all the way up. We're going to build it, but just to give them an idea and then have them pick from there. Is that kind of how you do it? Or am I just like going a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And for me, I like to give them control. If they can be in the driver's seat, again, I used to just take all the control, and then I would get upset at them for not doing it, or I'd be like frustrated, like, why aren't they doing it? And then as soon as you let them drive the car and they're like, okay, I want to do this, is because most people are going to know, right? Alex, you and I have talked about this before too. If you show somebody a plate of processed shit versus single ingredient whole foods, like they're probably going to be able to make that decision of which one's more beneficial for them. It's the same thing when we write out 7 days and they're like, oh man, I am drinking three glasses of wine 3 to 4 times a night. Like, you know what I mean? And then they're like, okay, I should probably start with that. And they start judging themselves. Like, you don't even have to say anything, right? And you start to figure out where they want to start, where they want to take control. And it's been so much more powerful, and it's super hard as a coach. It's almost like, I don't have kids, but it's almost like if you were to like just let your kid mess up and figure out the hard way first, or like touch the hot stove, and then they're like, oh shit, I won't do that again, right? It's like the same thing from the coaching perspective. Like, let them take ownership, and you almost have to like play cool and sit in the background and just be like, yeah, I agree with that. Like, cool, let's start there. And now they have complete ownership. It wasn't like I said, hey, you need to change this. And then once they start getting momentum, I'll start to open up like what the rest of the road's going to look like. Like, hey, you're doing great. You have a ton of consistency right now. You really got the ball rolling. I'm going to show you what's optimal. I'm going to kind of show you the gold standard, and I'm going to show you how you're just closing the gap each and every single day. And that's more so like what you were talking about, as far as, you know, that I have the 21-day jump start. That's what I do with my clients. And I just had a client yesterday complete her first 21-day jump start. She just started, and she has all of those down. I take that back. The one exception was water. So that's the one she's focusing on right now. So we just give that one a little bit more emphasis, but it was her decision. You know, it's something that I ask, like, out of the the sleep, 80% single ingredient whole foods, your steps, and your hydration. Out of those things, which one do you feel like you need to work on the most? Like she's like, oh, I have the other three down. Water, I'm terrible at. Okay, cool. Let's just give focus to that. But she picked it. I didn't pick it, right? Like I can look at her data and be like, you need to do this. But man, it's so much powerful when they pick it and they have control. I don't know if you do that, Gillian, with your clients, or if Alex, you've seen that, but when the clients have the ability to choose themselves and you kind of just sit back and just kind of almost agree with them, like, yeah, I think that's great. It becomes easier as a coach.
So much easier and so much more enjoyable. Like you don't want to be fighting with them. And I love when you were talking about like kind of just letting them like choose something and then like reap the consequences kind of after. Cause sometimes I'll be like, in my head, I'll hear what they want to do. And sometimes I'm just like, all right, well, it's probably not like the best option or whatever, but I'll be like, all right, if that's what you want to do, like I might give them a little bit of guidance, but I'll be like, I'm not going to fight you on it. Like, let's do it. Like, let's see how it goes. And then they might come back and be like, all right, yeah, no, like that did not work at all. And I'm like, awesome. So now we're on the same page. Now let's rock. Like,
Yeah.
But I always ask them, I'm like, what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? Or like giving them options, like you said, right? Like there will be different things that we know we want to focus on and seeing like, all right, well, like, what are you willing? What are you able? And what are you ready to kind of like work with?
It's like the mindset course, Gillian, that we took where it was like Andrew, who was the guy who taught the course. He's like, in a sense, you want the client to coach themselves, right? Because that's how you're going to get the best coherence from anybody is if they feel like they have a really good part of that process. And then there's also the person who wants to be told what to do, right? And so I think there's that balancing act of like, there's the people who like, they want to really feel like they have like a just power in it and that they have a piece of the whole process. And then there's people that are like, all right, quit fucking asking me what I want to do and just tell me what I should be doing to get to my goal. Right. And it's like, all right, well, this is what's going to be the most optimal thing to go at right away, and then just like that. But I thought that was funny because that is such a great process.
It's so true, man. And it's hard to do, right? Like you have to almost pull back the reins on yourself as a coach, because I know for me, I just want to give them everything and be like, all right, this is where you're at, but like, this is what's required and let's do all these things. And it's like, oh, slow down. Let them talk, let them be in control, let them take the accountability. And then in turn, our job becomes a lot easier because now we're just like, okay, yeah, we'll fine tune and we'll tweak. And it's like, you made that choice, but I see where you were going with that, but here's an alternative I suggest to try. And, you can kind of just lay it out like that. And like you guys are saying, they kind of write their own destiny from there. And we all integrate lifestyle change in our programs after hearing you guys talk. I know you guys do too. So that's most important. I used to do meal plans and all that stuff for people. I still give them sample meal plans. But the problem with that was that, again, that was me being in control and saying, hey, do this, follow X, Y, Z. And they got results, but it didn't set them up for success lifestyle wise. Like if when they went to travel, they went to a birthday party, they went to weddings, they're like, every time they're calling me like, hey, this isn't on the meal plan here. Like, what do I do? And so it made my job harder. I was like, shit. So, okay, let me give you, some parameters here. Let me give you some guardrails, and then you can decide what you want to feel. And people by naturally default, when you do it that way, is they go, oh, I ate this processed thing and I used to live off this, so I really didn't recognize it, but I've been eating single ingredient foods now and I understand how my body feels and how I operate. And so now they're making those decisions on their own versus me telling them that they should eat it. And it's been so much better. But yeah, I love what you guys are saying about that. I'll jump into this next one though. This next one is on what's your mindset, Gillian, around positive self-talk. Is that something that you discuss with your clients at all?
This is right up Gillian's alley. This is money.
I think also because I do work with a lot of women too. I only work with women. It's so important that we work on the mindset and like actually like working from a place of like self-love and not self-hate. And trying to work with your body versus against your body. That's a lot of like what I preach. So a lot of the work that I do with my clients really is like trying to get them to understand like where so much of their struggles or resistance with following like a plan are coming from as well. Because like so many of my clients are just so down on themselves, and they have like the self-doubt that they don't think they can do it, or they can't even imagine getting to where they want to be. And I'm like, okay, this is your blockage, right? If you have those clients where they're just like, you're simplifying it like so much, and it's just like they still like are struggling to do those things, it's like, all right, where is the blockage in the mind? And like a lot of those clients are literally like, I don't think I'm worthy of change, like I don't think that I'm actually capable of doing it. And we have to break it down and work on like doing like journaling. I got so many of my clients into therapy, like trying to make sure that they understand like they are worthy, and trying to again focus on those wins that aren't so aesthetic based, maybe not having them weigh themselves, not taking like progress photos, and just focusing on these smaller things that we can do. And also getting them, I do affirmations with them and things like that too. And I remember, Alex, when we were talking that one time where we're like, it needs to be like more than just like, yes, I'm beautiful. Yes, I'm like, less of those things where you don't believe them. Because if you keep saying these affirmations you don't believe, it's not going to work. But it has to be affirmations that you can feel and believe. So it's like, maybe I don't think I'm beautiful right now, but you could tell yourself like, I'm working towards being a better me. And it's like, okay, yeah, I could believe that. Right. So it's just like these small little things to get you to realize like, oh, okay, like I'm capable of doing this, instead of like, I'm like, every time you have a bad thought or you're telling yourself something negative, I want you to pause and at least acknowledge it and start like paying attention to that. And if you can, I want you to reframe it in a way that is more positive, not in a way where you feel like you're feeding yourself lies that you don't believe, but in a way where you're just like, okay, I want to rewrite this narrative so I can feel better about the situation. Because the more you cloud your thought with these negative thoughts, that's all you're going to believe about yourself. So it takes a lot of rewiring and a lot of reframing and catching yourself, because a lot of time we do it, we don't even realize it.
It's so unconscious, and that's so like literally that last 2 minutes is complete gold. Like there's so much good in there that people can get from that. So make sure you go re-listen to that if you need to, on some of those awesome tactics to take your self-talk to a different level. And you said something about journaling as well, which I think is a very, very powerful tool just among all of the other stuff you talked about. But I'm curious, like, what are some different things that, let's say somebody new to journaling, hasn't done it before, is like, fuck journaling or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe they're open to it, but like how could somebody start journaling to get the benefits of it with their mindset and with their self-talk, with their worthiness, all of those things?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time I just tell them like, whatever is like circulating around in your brain, just like put it on paper. Like, cause I feel like sometimes when I journal, I would like beat around the bush, like, I don't know what the fuck to talk about, like whatever. And it's like, no, just like whatever your thought is, like cut to the chase, like just put it on paper and get it out. And then just like read and reflect it and see like what is actually going on there. Or just notice like, you'll feel so much better because all of the stuff that's clouding your mind is now displaced, and it's not like in your head like beating you down, it's somewhere else. And you can kind of, it allows you to like separate yourself from those thoughts for the first time, because now they're somewhere else, and you start to be able to like reflect and realize like, oh wow, like I'm thinking like all of these things, like no wonder why I'm so down on myself, or no wonder. And things will come up that you've been suppressing for so long. Things like people never acknowledge or never even realize too, like stuff from like childhood, things like that. And that's why I also, for someone who really struggles to like write too, and not like has no idea what to write, I love like shadow work prompts, because they get you to really think. And then if there's a prompt, at least like you're like, all right, now I know where to like go with this, if you feel like you had no idea where to go with it. And those are the stuff where like people, I was talking to my one client yesterday actually, and I had her journal for the first time, and she's like, I just started like bawling. She's like, I just started like bawling my eyes out. And I was like, yes, this is good. We're releasing like all of this energy that you keep like trying to avoid within yourself. And now it's out there, and now you can start to realize like, okay, like I can go, out with like a clearer head, and I know how to like operate, and I know where all my thoughts are coming from. So I don't know. I feel like it's something you kind of you just have to do it. Like you really just have to let yourself do it, because it's not something where you can like really just like ease into it. Or maybe you set like a 10-minute alarm and it's like, okay, I'll do it for like 10 minutes and like that's it, and see what comes out.
That's so crucial. I mean, you guys are both hitting it on the head. It's like, I think most people, and you guys could probably say the same, is when they come into the program, I know for me specifically, and they start engaging in the program, they don't realize how much we're going to focus on mindset, because I don't think they realize how much they've been their own bottleneck in their process. And once they see that they have been blocking themselves from getting to these new levels, to achieving everything that they wanted to achieve, they just keep getting in their own way. But it's like you were saying, they don't even realize they're doing it until you start to journal, you actually get it out on paper. I know those of you that are listening are probably like, oh, that's kind of like woo woo, like that's kind of weird. Like, I don't know if I'm willing to do that. Especially if you're stuck, you might as well give that shit a try. Because trust me, when you get that out on paper, you're like Gillian's client, she started crying. It's like, whoa, I didn't even know that was in there. I didn't even know I was like holding that in my head. I didn't even know that was restricting me back. And when you get it out on paper, it's powerful. It really is. And so that's cool that you do that with your clients. I have my clients do that have problems with binging. I really have them journal on those, and that's helped a lot too. So it may not be necessary for all my clients, but the ones that actually use it, man, it's powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think also too, because the journaling is important when they're struggling with like hitting those goals. It's like, oh, okay, like this week was super off. Like, why was this week so off for you? And a lot of people struggle to be vulnerable, but like as a coach, it's like, we need to know this stuff so that we can help you. And then when you let people feel seen and you let people know that they're like, you care for them, they're way more open to being like receptive to like the process, and they're actually like, oh, okay, this person actually cares about me. Like, I feel okay telling them what's going on in my life also. And like, now that that's shared and released, I feel like I can go on with my week and actually start to like hit my goals again.
Oh yeah.
So awesome.
No, so good. And I'd say my last thing, I've said this before on the podcast when it comes to self-talk, but this is almost like a reminder for me, because this is actually a really good tool that I have not used in a long time, but it's around like your inner critic, right? Like we all have that inner critic, it's around that self-talk, the person that's kind of always putting you down inside. And, journaling is a great thing. Gillian mentioned positive affirmations, a lot of just reframing, right? Catching being aware of the thought and then being able to replace it. I think if we constantly allow these thoughts to just run our lives, then it becomes harder and harder all the time to do it, because we get farther down that road. The pathways get more wired in, right? It becomes harder to change. There's another one that I got from an NLP coach and then also a book, which was just having a different voice, like giving the voice, putting it outside of yourself, using like a really outrageous voice, like squeaky ass voice, giving it a name, like kind of like creating almost like a persona with this voice. And I kind of envisioned it when I was doing this. I've not done this in a while. Envisioned it like a fucking clown ass character outside of myself, right? Like the squeaky ass voice. And it really dulled that. It made me realize that a lot of the stuff that my inner critic was saying was outrageous, right? Because if we see it, we almost, like for me at least, I hear it as my own voice, right? It's like me saying it, right? When really, I don't know if that's the most helpful way to think of it, right? I think that if we can envision it as somebody else is saying it, because we don't necessarily have control 100% over it coming on, right? Like it's not like I can just I can reframe it, but I don't necessarily have all of this control for it to happen or not, right? It's just a matter of taking control after it happens to frame it in the right way, or to reframe it, or to whatever it is. So I found that is something, it's almost a reminder for myself that I can use that again if I have that going on. But that's something for anybody out there who hasn't seen the episodes where I've talked about that. That could be another potential way to move past these negative thoughts.
Wait, similarly to that, sorry, because I just love this stuff. But
this is a good one right here. This is a good one. I think this is one that a lot of people struggle with.
I love it. Also, like thinking about the way that you talk to yourself when you do have like this negative self-talk is like thinking that you're talking to like your younger self or like your inner child. So doing a lot of like that work, and like I know that one is like incredibly painful because you think about like your youngest, like most vulnerable self, like in a time where their needs were getting neglected and no one was there for them, right? And it's like, would you ever say anything that you're telling yourself right now to that like little girl or boy? And a lot of the time it will like bring people to tears because they're like, oh my God, like absolutely, like no, I would never. Like she needed some. It's like, what did that little girl need or little boy need at that time when their needs weren't being met and when they felt that low? And it's like, oh my God, like they just needed like a hug, or they just needed someone to tell them it was okay, or it was gonna, or they're beautiful, right? Like all of these different things. And it's like, okay, well, that's what you need right now. So like, can you do that for yourself? And it's like, it's like mind blowing to people, like when they're like, oh my God, like, yeah, like I want to be that person for my younger self. And then it's like, okay, well, your time is now. Like you have to be this for you now. And I also think about it as in like, right, like I want to hug my younger self. But then it's like, if I think about myself when I'm like 60, I'm going to look at myself right now and be like, oh my God, I was just like a young little like 20-year-old. I wanted to be there for myself. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, it's the same thing. It's like you're always thinking about. So it's like the only time you'll ever actually get to do that is right now. So why are we beating ourselves up?
It's so true. It's huge. And I think the hardest part is doing the work yourself. And you guys both talked about it. It's not like you just do it this one time. It's actually a skill that you got to develop over time, and it takes practice. And one thing I like having my clients do too is like, especially the ones that struggle with it and they talk to themselves really negatively, they have a habit of putting themselves down. I encourage them to almost think as if their thoughts were on a loudspeaker and it was exposed to everybody. Like, how are you talking to yourself? Would you be embarrassed by that? How would you feel if those were projected out? And it gets them to realize like, oh man, I'm super bad to myself. I'm super negative. I have, I don't know if you guys have this too, but 4-week calls with clients where we kind of touch base. And the very first thing we do after we do the rapport thing, hey, how you doing? What's the weather like? Blah, blah, blah. When we do an actual 4-week check-in, it's really to focus on what they did well. And then if we want to change anything going forward and make adjustments and kind of what's the game plan. But the very first thing that we go over is their wins. We talk about their wins, like what went really, really well. And it sets the tone for that call. And one thing that I found that you can see the clients that struggle with it is it's very tough for them to pull wins out, which is why I do it. And it'll be something like this. I'll be like, hey, what went really well for you these last weeks? Like what was positive? What came super seamless to you? And they're struggling to kind of pull things out. So this is an example I had a couple of weeks ago where somebody was like, well, I hit 3 out of my 4 workouts, but just like it was shitty with a work week. And you could start to see their mind like shift to start saying negative things, even though we're talking about wins. So it's very easy to see when other people do it. I think the challenge is seeing when you're your own bottleneck. And so hopefully you guys are taking something from this, and you guys can take what Gillian and Alex are saying, both with like acknowledging that inner critic. What is it saying to you? Can I be conscious and aware of it so that I can make the shift and change and realize like, man, I'm not being positive to myself right here. I'm not being conducive. I'm not being productive to myself in this process. So, man, this topic's super cool, and I think it's really important. And I think everybody gets blindsided by it, by the power that it actually has when you grasp and you harness it and you practice the skill. This next one is a good one too. So mind-body connection. Gillian, what are your thoughts on that? And I think it has to do with having a strong mind-body connection, how important it is, how much do you pay attention to it, both from a nutritional aspect and let's go like the physical side of it too. Is that something, I know obviously you focus on it, but is it something that you explain to your clients? Is it something that you do personally as far as improving the mind-body connection?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm trying to understand exactly like what it means, the mind to body connection. Is it more like not we're not talking muscle?
It could be.
I guess what I think of it as is like, being able to get the proper feedback, right? I think like,
Yeah.
understanding, oh, this food made me feel really good, or like this workout, like it just like do working out in this way. Like I just felt so energized throughout the rest of the day. That's kind of, I guess, my kind of thought maybe on it is like just like the different kind of things, like being in tune to your body, maybe.
Oh, I see. Oh my God, yeah. Okay, I get it now. Yeah, I would say that like I think a huge part of that is like why you have people like do these small little things, right? Like why we have them track water, why we have them maybe like track macros and calories, right? Because if people are not like doing this stuff first, they don't realize how much their everyday life is affecting them. I always say like to my clients too, once they start to make these connections, they're like, oh my God, wow, like I feel amazing. And I'm like, people don't realize how good they can feel until they actually start moving in that way. And a lot of the times, we don't even realize how shitty we feel either because we've never done the work to realize what it could feel like to feel good. So I think like that connection is so huge. So, like, yes, when it's like someone comes to me and it's like, oh, I have so much brain fog or I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired. And it's like, all right, well, we're drinking 30 ounces of water like on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden right now we're bumping their water up and they're like, oh my God, wait, like I suddenly have energy. And it's like, isn't that insane? Like, isn't it, it's like these small, like little things. It's like food, movement, all of that is literally medicine. And if we're not doing those things, you don't realize like how important they are and how much they like actually move the needle. So yeah, I think it's so important, right? Why we do check-ins, like you were saying, Matt, right? Like asking them like what were some of your wins. It's really getting them to focus and seeing like what they actually did well and how that's contributing to the way they're feeling, or vice versa, right? What did they not do so great at? And how did that actually make them feel? And a lot of the times, right, like people, especially like my clients who like drink and stuff, they'll be like, all right, yeah, this week I drank, I was hungover Sunday, so I didn't meal prep, my whole week got fucked up, like I felt like shit, I didn't do my workout. And it's like, right, so when we binge drink, right, and we get super hungover, how much does that affect your week? How much does that affect your goals? And it gets them to a point where they start to get fed up with their own shit too. And they're just like, yeah, I don't like this, so something needs to change. And then it starts to create them having that self-realization and taking that ownership and being like, all right, yeah, like I need to move different. And like you said, they start coaching themselves because they make those decisions and they realize how they feel.
So good.
Yeah,
And
it's such a great topic. Go ahead, Alex.
oh, I had two things, I guess, about this. First off, I think you said a lot of amazing things, Gillian. And for me, what I realized, I think one of the biggest areas that I realized this whole connection in was what you were talking about with you don't really notice how shitty you feel until you start feeling better. My sleep years ago was so bad, and I didn't know how bad it was until I started actually doing things that got it better. I started drinking more water. I started, you know, having more time at night to kind of relax and get away from just bullshit and stimulation and all of that stuff. All of a sudden, I started feeling so good, right? And so it's like I've seen that with so many clients because I like to work on sleep, where it's like, they're sleeping terribly, maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. You start getting them sleeping a little bit more, focusing on habits that are going to help build up that sleep and make that more optimal. And it's like changes their entire life, their mindset, their energy, how they're thinking, decision making, their movement, they're moving more, like all of these different things from like one thing, right? So it's a matter of that. And that brings me to a question, because I know I've done this in the past, even like not that long ago in the past. I know that you guys probably deal with clients that are struggling with this, where maybe they continue to do the same thing over, and they understand that these things do not help them feel good, right? Like it's the, like, I'm continuing to just over consume processed foods. I'm continuing to over consume and drink more, and I feel like shit, but I continue to do it, and I continue to do it, and I understand that I feel like shit, but it just keeps happening. So what do you both kind of do with those kind of clients to help them out?
I think that's the mindset blockage again. Like, I think it goes back to that because it's like well, then why are we not changing? And we need to figure out where that actually stems from. And okay, then sometimes I'll be like, do you actually care about changing then? Like, and it's okay. Like, if you don't, then that's fine. But like, be real with yourself. Like, do you actually want to change? And that's like a real question like they have to ask themselves. Like, or are you okay with where you're at, and finding like that deep rooted stuff that maybe they don't have that self-awareness for, and you have to dig and dig and dig until they start to, I think, make that realization of like they're worthy of more and they're actually capable of making that change. Because like you said, if they're so stuck in that cycle, they probably don't actually believe they could get themselves out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you have to get down to that, like that pearl. You have to take away the layers as much as you possibly can. And if somebody, if the pain of change or the pain of staying the same is going to just literally keep you in the same spot, somebody's not going to want to change, right? It's like, what degree are they willing to get uncomfortable? And the only way you can find that is if you actually want the thing that you say you do. Like if you want it, or you say that you want it because your friend is doing it and you think it would be cool to do the same thing that they're doing, or it's very surface level, especially when you have these ingrained habits, it's easy just to stay on that cycle. Like if you have these shitty habits and you keep doing the same thing day in and day out, it's very difficult to change and break that cycle if the willingness to change is not there, if the desire is very small. Again, like the surface level stuff. And honestly, I don't take those clients on anymore. Like when we have a conversation and if their goal and ambition is very like, oh, I think it would be cool to, I got a cruise coming up in 4 weeks. Like I need to do everything that I can to get ready for that cruise. And they have no thought or idea or perspective on longevity or lifestyle change or any of that. They just want to do something very quick, short, temporary. I pass them off to somebody else. I refer them, but that's not what I coach. And so I've made that mistake in the past, coached people who just wanted something very vanity, which there's nothing wrong with vanity, but there has to be a deep purpose as to why they want that. And then we can hit the ground running, and then their process will be really, really fun. It's going to have speed bumps, but they now have purpose and motive to work through, over, around, under those speed bumps, versus somebody that's just very like I think it would be cool to get there, but I like drinking more. Or, I think it would be neat if all the stars aligned and I got there. And then, man, those are the people that still have to, I would say, almost experience more pain, or they have to go back and dig on the desire a little bit more, so that they find that thing that you're like, okay, everything seems to get out of my way. When you find that kind of North Star, your desire, it's the process is much easier in that aspect. Alex, what do you think? We got time for one more?
Yeah, this has been like the quickest 50 minutes.
I know, ever. It flew by.
This flew by. Great conversation. Yeah. Let's do one more here.
Yeah, and, this last one's good. Did you read it?
I did. Yeah, you go ahead.
All right. Okay. This last one's around, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but this last one's around patience, understanding that results take time. What is your feedback as far as patience to you, yourself, your clients in general, all that good stuff?
I think patience is so important. And I think that's why I teach, or why I coach lifestyle, is because like all of my clients, like I'm like straight up, I'm like, I'm not going to get you where you want to be in like 6 weeks. Like we're not doing like you said, right? Like I pass those clients on too. I'm not here for like a short-term thing. I'm here for that long-term thing. And you have to keep reminding people to be patient. And I think that's where showing them like the wins and focusing on that, focusing on the good biofeedback, like all of that stuff, and showing them those things is what will keep them afloat. Because if you keep looking at the superficial stuff, like, oh, the scale, or you keep looking at like things that don't really matter so much, and they're more like what the client thinks that they want, then you start to lose them, because they don't trust the process anymore, because they don't know how to be patient. So you have to also like paint the picture for them of like what the action plans and the steps are eventually to get them to where they want to be, so they can see the vision and they can trust in the process. Because they're like, okay, I understand this is the phase that we're in right now. I know I'm not going to see weight loss in this phase, right? We're trying to eat more, right? Reverse diet. I'm trying to get strength up. So you have different goals in different phases to eventually get them to where they want to be. But you kind of need to lay it out for them and show them and tell them what's going to happen so they're not blindsided, right? Like someone comes to you and they're like, yes, I want to lose weight, and they're severely under eating, right? And we have to go through a reverse. They're going to be like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, what are we doing, right? But if you like lay it out and let them know, like, no, this is phase 1, this is phase 2, this is phase 3, and then we'll get you there and promise like we're in it for the long term, and then we're going to get you to keep it off forever, then they're more interested, especially if you can kind of repeat to them and, you know, ask them like everything they've done in the past. And we go over everything that hasn't worked for them that they thought they knew that would get them to their goals. And it's like, okay, well, like none of that stuff worked, right? So here's a completely different approach. Can you trust this process if we lay it all out for you and I tell you it's going to get you there long term? And then they start to be like, all right, well, everything I've tried hasn't worked, clearly, right? All these other things that promise me results super fast. So then they're like, all right, I'm in it for like the long haul this time.
Yeah, and I think that the why is so key too, where so many people have no reason why they're doing the things that they do. They're just like promised an end goal. And so like, you know, with us, I would assume all three of us do relatively similar things with people. You know, you get people who come in maybe under eating, we reverse diet them because, you know, you can't eat 1,200 calories and lose body fat, right? It's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be miserable. It's going to do more damage than good. And so building somebody up is going to help them increase their energy, sleep better, move more, also going to create room for an actual successful calorie deficit. But also, like what we were talking, you know, with patients, one of the big reasons why I put so many different forms of measurement out there for people, the different biofeedback, you know, energy, mood, hunger, sleep quality, just different things like that out there to help them see different things on top of weight, on top of body composition pictures, on top of body measurements. You know, the more things you put out there, the more that people are going to see the progress and see the wins. And kind of encouraging, I like to also just kind of, I think a good thing to input here is encouraging people to map out what success even looks like and what wins look like. Because I've had way too many people come in who on a regular basis are like, I didn't have any wins this week. There was nothing to show for this week. And I know, Matt, we've talked about this on the show probably countless times, but you know, I think that goes down to their definition of success. And that for me, I've had way too many years of my life where my definition of success was these like just monster milestone things, right? This is the huge, you know, getting drafted, quitting, you know, winning awards, quitting drinking, like these huge things that are just like happen once every 5 to 10 years, right? Like it's like, you know, you're not like gonna have any fucking wins if that's your definition of success. And so if you can kind of like push stuff like and make sure that whatever a win is for you, like I like to define it as like anything that moves me closer to my own true full potential, right? If that's success, if that's a win, then there are millions of wins throughout the day that are going to push me forward. And so I would challenge anybody out there that is struggling with patience to define wins in a different way, define success in a different way, put as many forms of measurement out there as possible, and understand that like, even if it takes you a year and a half, 2 years to do that, that's such a small percentage of how long you're going to live. It's going to increase your lifespan anyway. And it's going to increase just the quality of your life in general. And Matt, I know you got good stories when it comes to like client stuff and just especially when it comes to patience within the fat loss phase, right? Because we've all had clients that it takes 3, 4, 5 weeks of we should be in a calorie deficit to see the results that they're after. So I'd love for you to share one of those stories, at least with the people out there, to encourage those folks like that think they're in a plateau or think they're not seeing results, that consistency with it and patience is going to lead them to the promised land.
Oh, it's so important. And I think it's the reason as to why people have struggled with it in the past, specifically my clients that I'm thinking about right now. It's the reason why they weren't yet deserving of that next level. I always tell them ceilings become floors. So when you're looking up at what seems to be a ceiling now, eventually you're going to dominate it and you're going to step on that. And that's now going to be your floor. And then there's going to be another ceiling. But the problem is some people don't persevere through enough and they give up on the actions that yield that next ceiling to be able to achieve it, that they never get to it. And they throw in the towel and they give up first. And one of my clients in particular that I'm thinking about, he we're in phase 2, our fat loss phase, and he's doing everything perfect, dominating. And by the way, this is a great example of you can do everything perfectly, and those things that you're so worried about, one of them being the scale weight, can stay the same, cannot budge at all, could even fluctuate up, and you're still doing all the things that are required to be able to move in the right direction. And so first week stays the same. Second week does everything perfectly again, workout steps, everything, all tasks stays the same. I sent him this picture. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's one of my favorite. I like, all my clients like know me for it. I don't even know whose picture it is. I just stole it on the internet, but it's the picture where they're like the guy's chiseling and towards the diamonds. There's 2 of them. One guy gets the diamonds and then the other guy is super discouraged, but the wall, he maybe had 1 or 2 more swings and the wall was like this thin, but he gave up and he turned around. Right. And so I sent him that picture. And I said, keep chipping away, keep chiseling, keep focusing on the activities. Eventually, you're going to break through that wall. And then it was on the 4th week, I think, 3rd or 4th week, he dropped like 4.5 pounds. And so it's a perfect example of like, keep continuing to do the activities that are going to yield the outcome, regardless of what the short-term outcome is. And if you can do that, I know it sounds mind-numbing. I know it sounds tough. And it is. It's not supposed to be easy. That's why not everybody walks around super fit, in shape, walking around looking like the less than 1%, right? So if you want to do that, probably have to adopt the characteristics of what's required to be able to do that. And it's going to start with a strong mental game and being patient in the process. So yeah, dude, absolutely.
I actually had a client do the same thing like recently, where it was just consistency for like 4 weeks of our fat loss phase to start, nothing to show for. And I was like, dude, you're crushing it. Like, stick with it. Yep. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. Like, you're right on the edge. Mm-hmm. Next week, he lost 3 pounds. Right? It's mm-hmm. like, you know, just like these like small things where it just people quit or they try something new before that happens. But if you know that like you're just on the cusp and you're doing everything right, like you're doing really, really good, that you're so close. Like, just keep doing that same thing that you're doing, and eventually you're going to see the results. And also know that like if you're just looking at one form of measurement, that could be the problem too. Like, maybe you're seeing inches off. Maybe if you had pictures going back, like you would have changed your body composition dramatically. And that's what I encourage people as well, because I'm like 230 pounds, right? And I've been 230 pounds. It was like blah, you know, and I've been 230 pounds where it's like, damn, you know, and like you would think that it was a completely different way, right? You think that this blah 230 was 30 pounds more than the shredded 230, right? And so like that's what you get as well, is like people like think that they're going to look a certain way when they lose the weight, when that might not be the case.
Totally. Gillian, what do you got? Any last words of advice to people who are out there either struggling or just getting started in their journey? One piece of advice you'd give to them to just kind of give them the confidence that they can do this?
Ooh, I would say, honestly, just to trust the process and meet yourself where you're at and be okay with that. I think that's like the general message of today for the most part too, is like, be realistic with yourself, meet yourself with where you're at, and know that like you can and you will be able to change, but you have to be like willing, able, and ready to do so. And if you just put your best foot forward and you never give up, you're going to get there, because you're going to figure it out no matter what.
Hell yeah. And so first off, this is a good episode to share. I think that this could, you know, especially that stuff, and there's a lot of gold, but I think the positive self-talk section, which was a big portion of this, is something that a lot of people struggle with. Make sure you share with a friend. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our future episodes, Tuesday and Thursday. Before we go, Gillian, what are you working on? Where can people go to follow you? Where do you want to send people? Like, how can we help you out?
Yeah, I mean, I am mostly on Instagram at Jill G Fitness. I started my YouTube too. That's just my first and last name, Gillian Graessle. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me right now.
Awesome. Well, go follow Gillian. Go get her YouTube. I know that she's putting a lot of effort into those YouTube videos, so they're going to just continue getting better and better. when's the podcast coming out? I know you're starting a podcast as well. Maybe this is too early to drop. We can cut this. We can cut this if we don't. But like, I guess be on the lookout for a podcast sometime in the near future from Gillian.
Yeah,
it's coming.
That's like, it's still under construction.
Okay. Well, we'll just, this will come out in a few weeks from when we're recording it. So this will be a push in the direction of recording more podcasts so that you can get it out to the world. So
there you go.
All right. Well, we appreciate you, Gillian. This has been awesome. We'll have to have you on. We have 5 more to go through in this list. So we'll have to have you on here maybe down the road again to go through the last 5.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching, listening. We appreciate you all. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and we'll be talking to you soon.